Sure. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are joining us from. Thank you so much for joining us. We're meeting in a very interesting moment. There's a lot of geopolitical tension, and the ongoing conflict involving Iran continues to really reshape dynamics far beyond the actual battlefield. I think the war in Iran is already affecting us all. One of the key questions for us is the role of Russia, a country very strategically aligned with Iran, which alliance predates the current war and whose interests are deeply intertwined with the developments of this war. We're talking military cooperation, intelligence sharing, energy markets, and global power competition. This is very interesting relationship that is raising very important questions, not only for the region, but also for big actors like the United States, Israel, Gulf countries, and the European Union. To help us to try to unpack this very complex dynamic in an hour, I'm very pleased to welcome Arkady Mil-Man, former Israeli ambassador to Moscow and Baku, one of the most seasoned Israeli diplomats, right now head of the Russia program at INSS, and one of Israel's leading experts on Russia and Russia-Iran relations. So, Ambassador Mil-Man, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Let me
Thank you for
let
having
me
me.
yeah, let me start with a broad question. How would you characterize the current relationship between Russia and Iran? Is it a long-term alliance or something more practical?
Good evening, good afternoon to everyone. Good evening, good morning. It's a really very complicated question because the relationship between Russia and Iran, it's a very, very historically, it's a relations for the last as a minimum 300 years. And these relations are very, from one side, emotional relations of mistrust, uh, relations of instrumental, I will say, usage of each part for different interests. On the other hand, today it's almost strategic relationship in different aspects, especially in military, intelligence, security, cyber, different kind of aspects of military and civil cooperation. And today we have two countries, pariah countries, that are the, I will say, the alliance of anti-Western power, and they struggle against the Western countries. So from that point of view, this relationship are very complicated on one hand. On the other hand, there is a real threat to Israel, to European countries, to United States, of course, because of this alliance between these two pariah countries.
Thank you. Why do you think has Russia remained relatively cautious in its response to the war, despite the strategic and historical ties with Iran?
It's not so cautious, but some kind of there. I will say some level, and I will say that Russia today, the most important outcome for Russia is not on the battlefield, and it is in the aspect in how Moscow now understands American power. It's not only the issue of Iran, it's the issue of American power. And what Russia is learning from this war may matter more than anything it gains from it. And the question now is, how is Russia using this crisis and what it is paying for it, and how Russia is trying to exploit the situation around it. And I have to say that there is a cooperation on the military, in the military aspect. There, the transfer of intelligence information, special information, especially against American bases in Persian Gulf, and of course against Israel. There was also some kind of um, transfer of information. And the last visit of the Iranian foreign Minister of Foreign Affairs that he visited St. Petersburg last week. In this meeting with President Putin and with Minister of Foreign Affairs and advisor for international relations, Putin's advisor Ushakov, they also was the general, the head of the Russian military intelligence. In this kind of meetings, the presence of a high military commander, it's not a usual thing. It means that there are very close relations in this aspect. So from one hand, maybe they not participate, of course, they not participate in military activities in Iran, but still they help Iran with all their intelligence knowledge against United States and Israel, and also against the Persian Gulf states. And it's a real threat for our interests, for our mutual interests.
So is Israel's approach to Russia, at least a public approach, changing recently based on this information that you just shared with us? Because we remember very well that Israel was very cautious during the full-scale invasion of Russia on Ukraine. It took a
Yeah.
long time, relatively long time, for Prime Minister Bennett to uh, condemn the situation, uh, if I remember correctly. Um, and I
It's,
don't remember.
I'm sorry that interrupt you. It was condemned, Minister of Foreign Affairs Lapid.
Minister of Foreign
Yeah,
Affairs, yes.
yeah,
Minister of
yeah.
Foreign Affairs condemned. The Prime Minister's office didn't.
Yes.
And we have a feeling that, especially for European-Israeli relationship, this was one of the reasons why the relationships were shifted a little bit. So is Israel, who's actually started supporting Ukraine in much larger
Mm,
aspect than just humanitarian aid from the beginning. And right now we have Russia and Iran sharing intelligence against Israel. Is anything changing in Israel towards Russia?
publicly, I have to say there is no change. Still, there's some tensions. For example, last week there was a tensions about the grain ship that came from Russia with stolen Ukrainian grain. But that time there was a decision of the government not to open um, not to give a permission to go to Israeli port. But we don't see any, I will say, some kind of activities that we have some information about it. There's really nothing. But it doesn't mean that there are no some kind of activities on a secret level or without some leaking of information and without some public information. It means that, and I believe that there's some kind of cooperation between Israeli security authorities, Israeli military, and Ukrainians, but not in the level that I wish to see it, or some expert in Israel, because still we don't know if Netanyahu, 1 month ago, he talked about the cooperation with Ukraine on UAVs devices. But still, Zelensky said that Netanyahu didn't call him. So we don't know if there are some practical steps, but I believe that there's some kind of cooperation, but not on high level.
Okay, I understand. I know that you very closely follow Russian media, social media, Telegram channels. I'm wondering, can you tell us, can we go back a little bit to the day and the first days that the current war with Iran started? What were the comments, the official comments in Russia, but also the public comments on, Telegram channels? How did Russia react internally to joint attack of Israel and the US on Iran and killing of Ayatollah Khamenei?
Yes, it's a very important question because from the beginning there was condemnation of Israeli military activity and United States military activity against Iran. Uh, from Minister of Foreign Affairs, there were different kind of declarations. Also, Putin said the same. In social networks, there was a 100% anti-Israel and anti-American position and pro-Iranian position. But there is something that I have to say. For me, it was a bit like a surprise because for the first time I saw in during the march, during the military activity, in the beginning of April, we see some kind of reassessment of the Russian attitude towards the United States and the American policy right now. Their vision was like when President, first of all, they really were happy to see the second term of President Trump. For them, it was like some kind of success because the relationship between Biden administration and Putin administration were very bad, and tensions were in the air all the time. And we have to remember that the President Biden called Putin in a different kind of, in a diplomatic way, he said that he's the criminal and killer, etc., etc., etc. But with the beginning of the administration, there was a change of the Russian tone in public sphere, and also there were different kind of, for example, President Putin accepted the narratives of problems with elections in 2020, of 6th of January 2020. They 100% support different kind of MAGA slogans. They support, I will say, the rightist part of MAGA and the rightist part of the Russian politics. There were different contacts and even the same messages to public in public sphere. Now, the war, the 12-day war in 2025, there was some kind of Russian assessment that this is a part of American policy. It means that Moscow believed that Trump's approach was about deals. The assumption was simple. I will say the US would use pressure, even military force, to improve its position in negotiations, but not to achieve a total victory, as it was in 12 Days War. Russia also believed that America first meant less involvement in long wars and more focus on practical deals. But the war with Iran changed this view. And I'm talking about the last war of Epic Fury, Operation Epic Fury. Really, it's not a real war, it's a special military operation. But Russia now sees that US uses force not just as pressure, but to shape outcomes. For them, it was a surprise. For them, it was something that they didn't believe that it happens. War and diplomacy are no longer separate in their vision of American policy. They're part of the same system. There is a pattern. First, pressure, then escalation, then an offer to negotiate on US terms. And this makes the US look far less predictable. And in Moscow, there is now a growing belief that the US is less constrained by rules, which is true, is less tied to alliances, it's also true, and is ready to escalate more quickly than before. For them, it was a real surprise. As a result, agreements with the US in their vision are now seen as temporary. They can revise or broken at any time. The key Russian mistake was not about US power. Russia never doubted that. The mistake was about how that power is used. And Russia expected force to be a tool of bargaining. Instead, it sees force being used to change reality. And this has direct implication in Russian vision for Ukraine. And Russia now believes that the US may act more aggressively and more unpredictably, and they as well. And for them, it's something that needs real reassessment. And on the other hand, I have to say that the operation in Venezuela and then the war in Iran, against Iran with Israel, in cooperation with Israel, is very, very close cooperation with Israel in March, in the beginning of April. It was a shock for Russia. And today they are in the process of reassessments of all the relations, and now they understand that there's
Oh shit!
some
I think
return,
I hear call.
that there's some return to hegemony of United States in the global arena, and for them it's a big surprise.
I understand. Thank you. Uh, you mentioned military cooperation between Russia and Iran and cooperation on intelligence level. Um, who, in your opinion, is gaining more from this relationship and why?
Uh, it's a difficult question, I have to confess, yeah. Because we don't, in OSINT, and we use only open sources, we don't really have additional information to evaluate if Russia gains from this more than Iran or Iran gains. But the results are that, of course, Iran gains, but also Russia. Why? Because the main or one of the goals of Russia in this situation is to struggle against the United States, because Russia sees the United States as a real enemy of Russia, and especially in the Middle East, in Europe, and of course in the post-Soviet area. And for this, Russia has no choice, because the main Russian partner in anti-Western coalition is Iran. So Russia has to support Iran and transfer to Iranians intelligence that Iranian army needs. And the issue was because of the some American activities. Americans military disconnect the translation of Iranian satellites. And for Iranian, it was a real problem with intelligence information. So Russians, they transferred to Iranians the information they needed to strike American bases in Persian Gulf. So, of course, Iranians, there was a big gain for them. For Russian, it was like some countermeasures against American hegemony, against American military power in the Middle East. So, from this point of view, also Russia, has some gains from this situation.
Since you mentioned the Gulf states, I would like to move there a little bit. Um, how does Russia balance this strategic relationship with Iran while maintaining ties with other regional actors, especially in light of what you just said, that of information intelligence sharing that allowed Iran attack U.S. bases in the Gulf states? Did the war strengthen or weaken Russia's influence in the Middle East? And how are the Gulf states responding to Russia's cooperation with Iran?
Russian policy is, in some way, as I said before, instrumental policy. It means that for them there is no contradiction between two vectors. One, to help Iran against Gulf states in Persian Gulf, and on the other hand, to keep some kind of relations with these countries. For them is very natural. And President Putin called to the heads of these countries. He had some talks in the beginning of the war. On the other hand, there's some kind of relationship on some level, but of course, there was a real shift to the direction toward Iran. And now there's some kind of crisis in this relationship between the Persian Gulf states and Russia. But it doesn't mean then after this war, the relation will not be in higher level than today. It doesn't mean it because the Persian Gulf states also their policy is some kind of hedging, and one of the instruments is also to keep relations with Russia and with China as some counterbalance to the relations with the United States and other European countries. So, in this point, today, there's some crisis between Russia and the Gulf states and their relation between them. But it doesn't mean then after the termination of this war, this relation will not go in the positive direction. Because still, there are different kind of aspects that two sides need to keep some kind of relationship. And we also know that in Dubai, there is some kind of the Russian colony of Russian oligarchs and rich people that they have a lot of real estate in this country. They have huge accounts in Emirates banks, for example. There is some kind of relations between also between Qatar and Russia, between Saudi Arabia and Russia. And of course, there is also China that monitor all this, involved in all these relations. So the situation is very complicated and very, it's not, we need a few dimensions to analyze this relationship between this triangle, Russia, China, and the Persian Gulf states.
Uh, Thank you. I have more questions to you, but I would like to remind our audience that, this is a time for you to ask questions. You can send them in a chat and they'll get to me. And before we open the floor for the Q&A, I would like to tackle one more issue, which is economic situation. because this is literally affecting us all. Um, do you see that the current war with Iran can deepen economic cooperation between Russia and Iran, especially under Western sanctions?
There's a cooperation, of course, between Iran and Russia, but the trade cooperation, it's not so big and not so in a high level. I will give you a few data, some figures, yes, to understand it. Their trade um, between these two countries, between Russia and Iran, during last few years, the trade was on the level of only $4 or $5 billion. That's all. We don't know exactly the military aspect, but we think that it's not more than a few hundreds of millions of dollars. That's all. To compare, for example, to trade between Russia and China, it's $250 billion. So we see here a huge difference between these countries and the trade with Iran. But Russia, Russian businessmen, Russian government, they tried to learn from Iran how to avoid all these sanctions, how to open different kind of companies in certain countries and find the different logistic ways to buy important devices for Russian military industry in the West countries. The interesting thing is that till today we see in Russian UAVs in Ukraine some American part that produced in the United States and with American companies. And so it means that they really, in some way, they succeed to achieve their goal to buy different kind of Western products for their military industry. What we see that this economic relation will continue, of course, and they even establish a special system instead of SWIFT for a different kind of transfer between Iranian and Russian banks. They even issued the Russian special credit card that Russians can use in Iran, credit cards, the same as Iranian cards in Russia. And there is some kind of course, of cooperation and economic issue, but still it's not in a high level. 4 or 5 billion of dollars, it's not huge numbers for trade between these two countries. But it's more a matter of logistic, it's more a matter of some process, how to survive in the regime of sanctions. And there is a lot of cooperation between Russia and Iran.
Thank you. I would like to open the floor, and I know we have one question, the first question from Larry Hochberg. Larry, would you like to ask your question?
Is there any chance at this point Russia thinks it could lose the war in Ukraine? We see Ukraine seems to be standing up to them better than usual. Is Russia at all frightened that in the end they would lose that war?
Yes, this is today, especially, we are now in the fifth year of this war. And there is um, some evaluation and some assessment that there could be the last year of this war because Russian army and Russian military industry, they can't continue this war. Russia has a lot of problems in the economy. There is a huge deficit in the Russian um, financial budget, government budget. There is a lot of problems in Russian industries, especially military industries, in different kinds of vehicles. There is some problems in oil industry. I would like to mention that in last months, Ukrainians UAVs strikes on Russian refineries and in Russian ports and in Russian infrastructure, all infrastructure is Russian capabilities to export oil. It's this is this between 20 or 30% less they can export than it was before these strikes. So today, Russian economy and Russian military industry, Russian army, they are now in the maybe in the highest point of their capabilities and their maneuvers and their activities, but this is not enough to win the war in Ukraine, and it means that there is I will say today and for the next few months, there's no chance that Russia will win this war. And the Ukrainians now they are in I will say, they're in a good position to continue these military activities, and maybe in the end of this year we can achieve some kind of ceasefire. Maybe it also depends on the President Trump and on Trump's administration, of course. But there is no chance, I can say, that Russia can or would win this war.
Thank you.
We have another question following up on that. Arkady, can you imagine what would a Russia-Ukraine victory look like?
Ukrainian victory or Russian victory? Or two
I
of them?
think both. I
Both of
think
them.
both.
It's a very theoretical issue, but the Russian goal was demilitarization of Ukraine, denazification. It's some kind of really some unbelievable goal to avoid Ukraine acceptance by NATO and by European Union. So there were four goals for in the beginning of the war. Nothing happened. Nothing. Russian army didn't achieve these goals. Russian is now in the very, I will say, in a very controversial situation. And so this victory, it's not, it's, of course, they conquered 20% of Ukrainian territory, Luhansk region.
Right, Rogli area?
Sorry.
Sorry, I didn't.
No.
didn't-
I think someone
Oh,
just
there
had
was
their
a
mic on.
Columbia.
Can you please mute Randy, can you please mute the person? Thank you. Sorry, Arkady.
Yeah, no, it's not a problem. So it's 20% of the territory, Luhansk region, Donetsk region, Kherson region, Crimea, of course. But still, it's some kind of victory, of course, and Putin, there's Anschluss of these territories to the Russian Federation, and now it's a part of the Russian Federation. And maybe for him, it's some kind of victory, but he didn't achieve these goals. And today, Ukrainian army, it's the most powerful army in Europe. Today, Ukrainian weapons system, there is a compatibility with NATO. Today, the experience of Ukrainian, for example, in UAV technologies and the military experience in the highest point in Europe. Today, Ukraine, there's nothing with denazification. And still, the president of Ukraine is is the Jewish president. Yes, we have to still to remember it. And I have to say that never in Russia could be a Jewish president, but Ukraine it's possible because now this is a Jewish president. And this is a difference also between two countries. The victory for Ukraine, I think that Ukraine survives and Ukraine will exist. Now for Ukraine, victory will be to be very close to NATO, to be part of EU, to be part of Europe, of the free world, of the democratic world. But in Ukraine, there's still a lot of problems of corruption, different kind of political problem. But I have to say that Ukraine now in a better position than it was in 2025. And now with the fall of Prime Minister Orban in Hungary, and Ukraine will receive European financial support, $90 billion for the next years, for the next few years. Of course, there is a supply of European weapon system to Ukraine. And for Ukraine, it's a big problem is the continuation of assistance of United States. And what we see that for the next budget, there's no military assistance to Ukraine. And it will be some kind of a big problem for Ukraine because American military assistance is very important for Ukraine. So Ukraine now, if we try to see how it looks, victory looks for Ukraine, maybe today it's a better situation than it was in the previous year.
Thank you. We have another question, which is a little bit different and moving us to a different part of the world. So several former Soviet republics had a large Muslim minorities. And I'm talking Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, and Uzbekistan, for our audience to also bring them to the picture. What influence or impact, if any, do they still have on Putin and the politics of modern Russia?
For years, Russia, especially during the Putin reign, and we have to remember that Putin, it's 26 years Putin is a president and prime minister in Russia. So he is uh, he started his job as a prime minister. Before this, he was the head of the FSB, that it's a previous KGB organization. He was appointed in 1998. So from this year, he's in the power. And from 2000, from the 1st January, he was appointed as the president, and then there were election in March, and in 2000, and from that time, Putin is the leader of Russia. And even when he was a prime minister, not a president, still he was the leader of Russian Federation. These republics, Muslim republics, all of them Muslim republics, the majority of population is a Muslim population. The Azerbaijan is the 90% is a Shiites population. Others are also in Tajikistan. There's some kind of this population, but others is Sunnis population in Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and Turkmenistan. That was the area of the Russian influence. But in the last few years, there is a shift of these republics to some kind of independent policy, and they try to find some independent way. And there's some, I will say, some activities between the United States and these countries. And in the previous year, there was a special meeting between President Trump and the heads of these republics. It was very important, and it was in some way some kind of declaration. And in Russia, it was this meeting was for them as a surprise, as a big surprise. Second, China is also very competitive in this region. There is a lot of Chinese projects. Third, Turkey. There is a very good connection between Turkey and Azerbaijan, Turkey and Kazakhstan, Turkey and Uzbekistan, less with Kyrgyzstan and less with Turkmenistan and Tajikistan. But still, there's a very close relation between these countries and different kind of economic relations. So these countries now trying to find some kind of hedging, and they move to some kind of independent policy and try to, of course, they cooperate with Russia, and of course, there's a lot of gastarbeiters that today work in Russian Federation, especially in Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan. Less less from other Muslim countries in Asia, but in Central Asia, but also these countries, all of them, they would like to see a different situation in the region and less Russian influence in their republics.
Thank you. Arkady, I would like to tackle a little bit the rising oil prices and potential supply disruptions. Do you think this situation could push European Union countries to become more open to new forms of energy cooperation with Russia? Maybe even considering some certain political constraints? Or do you think that this support for Ukraine is so strong that Europe will bear flight cancellations, rising prices, just not to go, go back in bed with Russia? So that's one part of my question. And also, is there any influence of UAE saying that they are going to leave OPEC? Can this affect Russia as well and potential European Russian cooperation on the oil
Mhm.
sale?
Still, there are sanctions on Russian oil, and the European tried to be free of Russian supplies of gas and oil. It's also the matter of gas
Mhm.
supply. So these days there are some kind of discussion in the European Union on this issue, but still I don't see any shift to find some ways with or some negotiation. I don't see some negotiation with Russians regarding this issue of buying oil from Russia. But we have to take in consideration that that also there's a shift of Slovakia. The Slovak Prime Minister Fico with the former Prime Minister of Hungary, Orban, they wanted to buy Russian gas and Russian oil. The problem was that the transportation of this oil was through the Ukrainian territory, through the pipeline that they called Druzhba. In translation, it's friendship. And this pipeline was very important for supplying of oil to Hungary and the Slovak Republic. Slovak Republic has a common border with Ukraine and also Hungary. Now, after the fall of Orban in Hungary and the new government, that this government is pro-European government, and the new Prime Minister Magyar said that they will support European policy toward Ukraine. It means it's a different approach, 180 grade different approach. And what is interesting that 2 days ago, the Prime Minister Fico said that he will also have some discussions with President Zelensky, with Ukrainian president. And President Zelensky said that he now will agree to supply through this pipeline oil to Slovak Republic. It means that Slovak Republic will support Ukraine. It's a new, it's a really new policy of Slovak Republic. It's something different from the past. So from this point of view, there is some kind of Russian oil that will go to Slovak Republic, and this is with the permission of European Union, because there are some problems of transportation of the oil to this to Slovak Republic. So this is the only one way to find the oil in a good price for Slovak Republic, and they have permission from the European Union. So this will continue in the next 1, 2, maybe 3 years. We have also remembered that Ukrainians receive also some gains from this transportation of this oil. It's very important for Ukraine to receive money. It's in some way, it's a paradox, of course, and that Russian sell oil to Slovak Republic, and this oil, this gain is financing the Russian military activities in Ukraine. On the other hand, Ukrainians, they receive money from because of transportation of this oil through their territory. But this is politics, and we have to live with this. Today, the policy of UAE with their problems with OPEC, of course, it will influence the oil prices, and it's good for the United States. So there may be, in our opinion, there were some discussion between the White House and the head of the United Arab Emirates on this issue, and there's in some way some policy that was discussed between these two countries. Regarding the oil prices, of course, it will help to keep these prices on not in the highest level. And for Saudi Arabia, it was a bit surprise. There are now tensions between UAE and Saudi Arabia. And there's, it's, I will say, in this complicated situation, it's a negative development. But we'll see what kind of policy will be of these two countries in the next months. Also, there's a matter of Kuwait, because Kuwait is also very important oil producer. We'll see. European, of course, they're interested in opening of Hormuz Straits. But we'll see how American policy and what will be the next steps of President Trump regarding this issue. All the world, all the South and Japan and South Korea, and of course China depends on this decision. We'll see.
Thank you. Arkady, I have one more question from Victor. Why do you think Trump administration is so soft on Russia and so hard on Ukraine?
It's a very difficult question. It's maybe one of aspect is a psychological, and some kind of tensions between the President Trump and President Zelensky. And these tensions exist for the last few years, from the first presidential term of President Trump. You know what I'm talking about. There are some kind of good relations between President Trump and President Putin. We don't know exactly what is the basis of these relations. We can guess, we can think, we can evaluate this kind of relationship, but we don't know exactly why President Trump is his attitude toward President Putin so positive and so negative toward President Zelensky. I doubt if there is any, I will say, basis for the illusion that the United States economic projects with Russia will bring some gains to United States. Never the trade relations between Russia and United States were in the high level. Never. The figures a few years ago, there was a trade between two countries around $30 billion of dollars. That's all. It was the highest level of the trade. And between the trade between Europe and United States is around $900 billion. So you can compare $30 billion and $900 billion. And all this illusion that economic project between Russia and America will bring a lot of money to American budget, we don't know. It's really, there's no economic basis for this. There's no some figures or some data that we can evaluate to say really there's some kind of chance to this. So we don't know exactly. So we have different explanation for this kind of relationship between President Trump and President Putin and President Zelensky, but we don't have a real evidence why it happens. So there is a different assessment, different opinions, and that's the situation. That's the situation.